I gave my son everything. My love, my savings, even co-signed a $150,000 loan so he could buy his dream home. But at his lavish housewarming, he said there was no space for people like me in front of his elite guests, told me to sit in the garage. I smiled, went home, and made one quiet call that destroyed everything he thought he'd built. My name is Claire Benson. I'm 68 years old, retired now, and I've lived a quiet life these past few years. Not a grand life by any means, but a life I could be proud of. I spent most of it teaching at the local elementary school. 34 years in the same building, in the same classroom, shaping little minds and wiping away tears when someone scraped a knee. I was never after riches or recognition. I just wanted to do good, raise my boy right, and sleep with a clean conscience. My husband, Mark, passed away when our son Nathan was only 12. It was sudden, a heart attack, quick and cruel. After that, it was just me and Nathan. I remember those years like they were yesterday. The late nights helping him with homework, packing lunches, working extra hours tutoring just to make ends meet. We didn't have much, but I tried to make sure he never felt that. Nathan was a bright kid, always sharp, always ambitious. He used to tell me he'd make it big one day and buy me a mansion. I'd laugh and tell him I didn't need a mansion, just a porch with a good view and a place for flowers. Still, I loved hearing him dream. He grew up fast, too fast sometimes. He went off to college on a partial scholarship, studied business, and started climbing the ladder before I knew it. He worked hard, I won't deny that. Landed a solid job in consulting, started making real money. I was proud of him. Still am, in many ways. But something shifted over the years. The sweet boy who once held my hand on the walk to school turned into a man always in a hurry, always distracted. Our calls became shorter, visits less frequent. Busy, Mom. You know how it is. I tried not to take it personally. Life moves fast when you're young and building something. I figured he'd circle back when things settled. Then came the house. That big, shiny house he had his eyes on for months. He called me up one evening, voice full of excitement. "Mom, this place is everything I ever wanted," he said. 4 bedrooms, big backyard, even a media room. But I need a little help. He needed someone to co-sign the loan. His credit was good, but the bank wanted more security. That's where I came in. My retirement savings, my modest but steady credit, it was enough to tip the scale. I didn't hesitate. Not for a second. "Nathan," I said, "of course I'll help. I'm proud of you." He was grateful then. At least he sounded like it. "You won't regret this, Mom. I promise." A few weeks later, he closed on the house. Sent me photos of the place, tall ceilings, marble counters, those huge windows that let the light in like in magazines. He said he'd have a housewarming party soon and wanted me to be there. "Oh, Mom, you have to come," he said. "You'll love it." I was excited. Truly. I spent the next few days looking for the right outfit, something nice but comfortable. I even baked a lemon pound cake, the one he used to beg for when he was a boy. I tied it up in foil and carried it in both hands so it wouldn't get squished in the car. The drive to the house took a little over an hour. He'd moved into one of those new developments in the suburbs, where every street is lined with perfect lawns and houses that look like they came out of a catalog. His street was buzzing when I arrived, cars parked on both sides, music drifting from open doors, laughter spilling onto the sidewalk. I stood outside the house for a moment, taking it all in. My son had done well, better than I ever imagined. I felt a pang of something between pride and distance. I knocked once before opening the door, not wanting to just walk in. Nathan appeared, holding a drink and wearing a crisp white shirt. He looked sharp, confident, the kind of man who owned his world. When he saw me, he smiled, but it wasn't the smile I remembered from when he was little. It was brief, polite. "Hey, Mom, you made it," he said. He took the cake from my hands and looked around, as if checking for something. "Listen," he continued, lowering his voice, "the house is kind of full right now. A lot of people from work, clients and all. We're trying to keep everything organized." I nodded slowly, not quite understanding. "Would you mind just hanging out in the garage for a bit? Just until it clears out a little? It's cleaner in there than it sounds. We've got chairs set up and drinks, too. I just want everything to stay tidy inside." The words hit me slowly, one after the other. I stood there for a second, unsure if I'd heard right. The garage? I looked past him and saw the living room packed with people laughing and chatting, glasses clinking. I saw women in high heels and men in suits. Strangers. "Oh, of course," I said, smiling. I didn't want to make a scene. "I understand." He led me to the garage, where a folding chair sat in the corner beside boxes of unpacked things. There was a cooler with soda and beer. It wasn't filthy, but it wasn't welcoming either. "I'll come check on you in a bit," he said before disappearing. I sat down, clutching my purse in my lap. I listened to the party through the walls, heard Nathan's voice rising in laughter, the hum of conversation, the clatter of silverware on plates. No one else came in. No one even knew I was there. I stayed for maybe 20 minutes. I drank a ginger ale and stared at the shadows the light made on the floor. Then I stood up, smoothed my dress, and let myself out quietly. I drove home in silence. The road was dark, the sky heavy with clouds. I didn't cry. Not then. I just kept thinking over and over. So this is how it feels. To be forgotten in a room full of people you helped build. I got home, took off my shoes, and sat on the edge of my bed. I looked around my little house, plain worn but full of memories. And then I stood up, walked to my desk, and pulled out the loan papers. There, in black ink, was my signature. The cosigner. The guarantee. I stared at it for a long time. Then, with a steady hand, I picked up the phone and called the bank. It wasn't an easy call to make. I sat with the phone in my hand for nearly 10 minutes before dialing. The lady at the bank was polite, probably in her 40s, judging by her voice, calm, professional. I gave her my information, confirmed my identity, and then I said the words slowly, like each one carried weight. I would like to withdraw my co-signature from the loan agreement. There was a pause. Then she asked why. I didn't give her the full story. I just said, "There's been a personal development, and I'm no longer comfortable being financially responsible." She explained the process, said it would trigger a reassessment of the mortgage. That Nathan would be contacted. That without my backing, the bank might require additional collateral or change the terms. I said I understood. I signed the withdrawal forms the next morning, mailed them in with tracking. Some people might say that was harsh. Maybe it was. But I didn't do it out of revenge. I did it because I needed him to understand something. Respect isn't optional, not even for your mother. The days that followed were quiet. I kept to myself, did my grocery shopping, read in the afternoons, watered my plants. I didn't hear from Nathan. I figured the bank hadn't gotten to him yet. Or maybe he was too busy to notice. Funny, how that became a pattern with him, being too busy. It wasn't until the following week that I got a call. "Mom." His voice was sharp, strained, not like the smooth confidence he always wore. Did you cancel your co-signature on the loan?" I didn't speak right away. I wanted to choose my words carefully. "Yes," I said finally. Silence. Then a sharp breath from his end. "Why? Do you have any idea what you've done? The bank is threatening to raise my interest rate. They said I may need a second guarantor or risk penalties." "I understand," I replied, my voice steady. I thought about it carefully before I made the decision. "But why?" he pressed. "What changed?" I wanted to say so many things in that moment. About the party, the garage, the way he'd made me feel like an inconvenience in a home I'd helped him secure. But I didn't want to argue. I wasn't looking to wound him. I just wanted him to see. "I sat in your garage, Nathan," I said quietly. "While you entertained your guests, I sat alone next to boxes and folding chairs. You told me there was no room for me in your house." There was a pause. Then he said, "It wasn't personal, Mom. It was just, I was trying to manage everything. There were clients. I didn't want." "I understand," I interrupted. "You didn't want your coworkers to see your aging mother. Or maybe you didn't think I matched the image of success you were trying to project. I've thought about it every day since." He didn't speak. I imagined him standing in that big kitchen, the one with the marble counters I'd seen in pictures, realizing he'd never even offered me a seat at the table. "I'm not angry," I continued. "I'm disappointed. Not because you've changed, but because you don't see what you've become." "That's not fair," he said, but his voice was quieter now. "I raised you alone," I said. "I put every ounce of energy I had into helping you grow. And when you asked me for help, I didn't hesitate. I didn't ask questions. I believed in you. But you treated me like a stranger, Nathan. Like someone who didn't belong." His breath hitched, and for a moment I thought he might apologize. But he didn't. "So what now?" he asked bitterly. "You've made your point. You've put me in a corner." "I didn't want to put you anywhere," I said gently. "I just wanted you to remember where you came from, what we've been through, and what respect really looks like." That was the end of the call. No apology. No reflection. Just silence. I sat back and stared at the phone, feeling something I hadn't expected, relief. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I'd stood up for myself. I'd drawn a line, not out of spite but self-respect. Over the next few days, I kept thinking back on the years when Nathan was small. When he used to bring me wildflowers from the yard and say, "These are for you, Mama, 'cause you always smile at me." He used to love my smile. He used to sit on my lap and rest his head on my chest, and ask me why I smelled like soap and hugs. Where had that boy gone? I knew success changed people. The suits, the cars, the language, they all came with a price. But I had hoped that somewhere beneath the surface, my Nathan was still there. Still kind. Still warm. A week after our phone call, he showed up at my house unannounced. I heard his car pull in, the sound of his expensive tires crunching the gravel. I watched from the window as he sat there for a minute, engine running. Then it stopped. He got out, walked to the door, and knocked twice. I opened it and saw him standing there in slacks and a polo shirt, looking tired. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside. He didn't sit right away. Just stood in the middle of my small living room, hands in his pockets. He looked around, probably noticing how modest everything was compared to his place. "I wanted to talk," he said. "Not about the loan. About everything." I nodded and waited. "I messed up," he said finally. "That night. I wasn't thinking. I was stressed. I wanted everything to be perfect, and I didn't think about how it would feel for you." I watched him carefully. He wasn't crying, but his eyes were glassy. "I'm sorry, Mom." There it was. Late, but there. "I didn't mean to make you feel small," he went on. "You're the reason I even have that house. You're the reason I made it this far." I felt my chest tighten. I'd waited so long to hear those words. Not because I needed praise, but because I needed him to remember. "I just wanted to be part of your happiness," I said softly. "Not as a guest. As your mother." He sat down across from me then, and for the first time in years he looked like the boy I remembered. We talked for a long time that evening. About the past. About Dad. About how far we'd come. I told him stories he'd forgotten. He listened, really listened. And for the first time, I started to believe we might find our way back. Not to the past, but to something better. Something built on understanding, not just achievement. But life, as I've learned, doesn't unfold in straight lines. Even when the words are right, even when you hope again, there's always more to come. Some things you can't see. Some things hide in the cracks, waiting. And I didn't know it yet, but this wasn't the end of the story. It was only the middle. That evening with Nathan gave me something I hadn't felt in a long while. Hope. It was quiet, cautious hope, the kind you hold gently, afraid it might slip away if you hold too tight. He'd apologized, yes, and I could see in his eyes that he meant it. We talked more in that one visit than we had in months. He stayed for dinner, too. I made us grilled cheese and tomato soup, just like I used to when he was little. He laughed when he saw the chipped red bowls I still used. Said they hadn't changed since he was 12. "Neither have you," he said. "Still making comfort food like it's magic." I smiled. It felt good, that little warmth between us. And I let myself believe that maybe this was a turning point, a fresh start for our relationship. Not mother and son divided by time and success, but two people reconnecting with history and heart. He left that night promising to come by again soon. "Next weekend," he said. "We'll have lunch and I'll bring the good coffee." I watched his car disappear down the street and closed the door feeling light for the first time in weeks. I even pulled out an old photo album, flipping through pictures of us, Nathan in overalls, Nathan holding a frog, Nathan standing proudly on his graduation day with my arms wrapped around him. I went to bed with a smile that night. But life, as I've come to understand, doesn't always stay kind just because you need it to be. The next morning, the phone rang. It was the bank again. "Mrs. Benson," the woman on the line said, "I just want to confirm that you are aware of the pending status on your withdrawal." I was confused. "I mailed the signed forms last week. I tracked it. You received them?" "Yes," she replied. "We have the documents. However, Mr. Benson has filed a dispute." "A dispute?" "Yes, ma'am. He claims you were under emotional duress and not of sound mind when the documents were signed." I felt my stomach drop. "I'm sorry," I said almost in a whisper. He said that. "It's standard procedure for disputes of this kind. We are placing the withdrawal on hold until further evaluation." I thanked her and hung up. My hand was shaking just a little. I stared at the wall, unsure whether I had heard her right. Nathan had come into my home, sat at my table, apologized, shared soup. And the next day he filed a challenge behind my back? I wanted to believe there had been some mistake. Maybe a miscommunication. Maybe someone from his bank team had acted without his approval. But in my heart I knew better. I knew my son. And I knew the way money could cloud his judgment. I didn't call him right away. I needed time to think. I walked the neighborhood that afternoon, past the park he used to play in, past the little library where we read books together on rainy days. I kept thinking about the man Nathan had become. Not the successful part. Not the confident, well-dressed part. But the part that felt the need to lie to his own mother to protect an image or an investment. When I finally picked up the phone to call him that evening, I still gave him the benefit of the doubt. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, Mom." His tone was casual. Normal. "I got a call from the bank today," I said quietly. There was a pause. "Right. Yeah. I was going to tell you. You filed a dispute." Another pause. "It's just temporary," he said quickly. "I didn't mean for it to be a big deal. I just needed to buy some time. The bank started pushing changes I wasn't ready for. You told them I wasn't in my right mind." "Mom," he said, suddenly defensive. "It's just language they use. It doesn't mean I think that. You're sharp as ever. Then why say it at all?" "I didn't have a choice," he replied. I panicked. They said the loan would be flagged. Do you know what that does to my financial standing? To my reputation? I closed my eyes. Your reputation is more important than your mother's dignity? That's not fair. No, I said, my voice firm now. What's not fair is being treated like a problem. First you sat me in a garage like a forgotten coat, and now you question my sanity to hold on to a house I helped you buy. I said I was sorry, he snapped. I came to see you, didn't I? I meant what I said. But this is bigger than just us. I have people watching me. Expectations to meet. And none of that includes being honest. He didn't answer. I'm tired, Nathan, I whispered. I'm tired of being useful only when you need something. I'm tired of being respected only in words, not in action. He let out a frustrated sigh. You're blowing this out of proportion. I'll fix it. I'll withdraw the dispute. I didn't believe him. Not anymore. Do what you think is right, I said and hung up. That night, I sat on the back porch. The air was cool, and the crickets had started their quiet song. I held a mug of tea and stared at the stars. Somewhere in that darkness, I tried to remember the little boy who used to draw me crayon hearts and sneak cookies into his backpack. I missed him, but I also knew something clearly now. You can't force someone to value you. You can give. You can love. You can sacrifice. But if they don't choose to honor that, then your silence becomes your voice. A few days later, I got another call from the bank. Nathan had withdrawn the dispute. The loan would now be reevaluated. The woman on the line said Nathan had requested a reassessment on his own terms and was working with a new guarantor. She didn't say who. I didn't ask. I didn't call Nathan again. He didn't call me either. Weeks passed. The silence grew longer but not colder. For once it felt like space I needed. A chance to heal. To reflect. To stop chasing love that should have come freely. I spent time tending to my garden, reading the newspaper every morning, feeding the birds in my backyard. I even joined a knitting group at the library. I was still alone, but I wasn't lonely. And then one morning a letter came. No stamp. No return address. Just my name on the envelope in handwriting I knew well. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Mom, I'm sorry. For everything. I don't know how I lost my way, but I did. You didn't deserve any of it. You deserve more than I can put in words. I'll do better. If you let me. Love. Nathan. I read the letter 3 times. My hands trembled, not from anger, but from the ache of hope returning once again. He had taken a step. A real one. But as I folded the letter and placed it in my drawer, I reminded myself, one step doesn't erase the road that came before. There's still more to tell. Because even apologies, no matter how sincere, don't close the story. Sometimes they open the door to the final chapter. The letter stayed in my drawer for 3 days before I touched it again. I would open it in the mornings, read those short lines, and fold it back up without really knowing what I was feeling. Part of me wanted to rush to the phone and call Nathan, to tell him that yes, I forgave him, that we could try again, start fresh. But the other part, the wiser part, perhaps, knew that forgiveness isn't a switch you flip. It's something that takes time to settle in the heart. And mine had taken some bruising. I spent those days in a kind of in-between space. I went through the motions, sweeping the porch, washing dishes, feeding the neighbor's cat while she was out of town. But in my mind, I kept circling back to Nathan. I thought about that boy who used to fall asleep on the couch with his head on my lap. I thought about the young man I watched cross the graduation stage, proud and full of promise. And I thought about the man who had asked me to wait in the garage at his celebration. It was like trying to put together 3 different versions of the same person. Then one afternoon, as I was trimming the lavender bushes in the front yard, I saw his car. I recognized it before it even turned the corner. Sleek black, too fancy for these quiet streets. He parked right in front of the house and got out without any hesitation, holding something in his hand, a small paper bag. I stayed where I was, hands full of lavender stems, heart thudding slow but heavy in my chest. "Hi, Mom," he said, walking toward me. "Afternoon," I replied. He glanced at the flowers in my arms and gave a soft smile. "Still growing those? They keep coming back, even when you don't expect them to." He looked down, clearly catching the message. "I brought lunch," he said, holding out the bag. "Your favorite. Chicken salad sandwich from Marie's." I raised my eyebrows. "I didn't think you remembered that." "I didn't," he admitted. "I asked around." We went inside and sat at the kitchen table, the one with faded edges and a loose leg that wobbled if you leaned too hard. I didn't say much at first. I let him talk. He told me about the stress he'd been under at work, the expectations from his bosses, the pressure to maintain a certain image. He admitted that the house was more than he needed, but he'd bought it because it made him feel like he was finally successful, like he'd made it. "I got caught up," he said. "Somewhere along the way, I started thinking the house, the car, the suits, that's what success meant. I forgot who helped me get there. I listened. I didn't nod, didn't interrupt. Just listened. I never meant to hurt you," he continued, voice softer now. "And I never should have filed that dispute. That was wrong. No excuses." He looked at me then, eyes steady, searching. "I just want to make things right." I sipped my tea and let the silence settle for a few seconds. "I believe you mean that," I said finally. "But words are easy, Nathan. Living by them is the real work." "I know," he said. "I want to try. If you'll let me." So we started slow. He began visiting once a week. Nothing dramatic, just small things, a Sunday breakfast, a short walk, helping me fix the leaky faucet in the bathroom. It wasn't the grand gestures that mattered. It was the consistency, the effort. One weekend, he surprised me by bringing over a box of old photo albums. "I thought we could go through these together," he said. We spent the afternoon flipping through pages, yellowing photographs of birthday parties, beach trips, his school plays. Every photo carried a memory, a piece of us. He laughed when he saw one of himself at 5, wearing a cowboy hat and holding a broomstick like a sword. I laughed too. "I miss those days," he said quietly. "Me too," I replied. But still, something in me stayed guarded. Not because I didn't care, but because I'd learned that trust isn't something you hand back freely once it's been broken. It has to be earned again, step by step. Then one evening, about a month after the letter arrived, Nathan asked if I wanted to see his house again. "Properly this time," he said almost shyly. "No guests. Just you and me." I hesitated. My last visit there had ended with me in a cold garage, holding a plate of untouched cake. The thought of going back stirred something uncomfortable in my chest. But I also knew this was another step. For both of us. "All right," I said. "Let's do it." He picked me up that Saturday morning. The ride there was quiet but easy. We talked about the weather, his work, the flowers blooming on the roadside. When we pulled into his driveway, the house looked just as grand as I remembered. Big, polished, like something from a catalog. But this time, he didn't lead me around the side or gesture toward the garage. He opened the front door wide and said, "Come in, Mom." I stepped inside and looked around. The house was beautiful, yes, but it wasn't that caught my attention. It was the small things. A framed photo of the two of us on the hallway table. A vase of fresh lavender on the counter. My lemon pound cake recipe printed and pinned to the fridge. He gave me a tour, and this time he didn't rush. He showed me every room, told me what he planned to change, what he was proud of, what still needed fixing. We stood in the living room where the party had once taken place, and he said, "This is where I should have introduced you to everyone." I was a fool not to. He showed me the guest room. "This one's yours," he said. "Whenever you want to stay." It wasn't about the room. It was about the gesture, the invitation. After the tour, we sat in the backyard. The sun was warm, and there was a light breeze. He brought out iced tea and 2 slices of cake he'd bought from a bakery. "Still not as good as yours," he joked. We sat in silence for a while. Comfortable silence. "I know I have a lot to make up for," he said. "You're doing it," I replied. But I knew in my heart the story wasn't finished yet. This was healing, yes, but something still lingered. Something quiet and unspoken. I felt it like a shadow at the edge of light, something not quite settled. And I would come to find, in the days ahead, that even when the pieces begin to fall back into place, life can still hold a twist you didn't see coming. Because peace isn't just something you build, it's something you protect. And sometimes it gets tested when you least expect it. Things had started to feel normal again, or at least a new kind of normal. Nathan kept his promise. He visited often, called just to talk, even came by on his lunch breaks sometimes to bring me soup, or just to sit on the porch for a few quiet minutes. We didn't talk about the loan anymore or the party or the garage. That chapter had been acknowledged, and we had turned the page. But I still carried it with me quietly like a pebble in my pocket, just enough weight to remind me not to forget too easily. One Thursday morning, I was reading the newspaper, a cup of tea cooling by my elbow, when I got a call from someone I didn't recognize. Her name was Denise, she said, and she was calling from Nathan's office. "Mrs. Benson," she said in a concerned tone, "I apologize for calling you like this, but we weren't sure who else to contact." My heart jumped. "Is Nathan all right?" She paused. "He's not hurt, but there's a situation." She went on to explain that Nathan had left the office suddenly the day before and hadn't returned since. He wasn't answering calls, and this wasn't like him. He had a big presentation due that morning, and they were worried. "Did he tell you anything?" she asked. "Did he seem off lately?" I tried to stay calm. "No, not that I noticed." After the call, I tried Nathan's number. Straight to voicemail. I waited a few hours, told myself he was probably just taking time off. But by evening, I still hadn't heard anything. I called again. Nothing. A strange sense of unease crept over me. That shadow I'd felt before, at the edge of peace, it was starting to grow. The next morning, I drove to his house. I hadn't planned to. I hadn't even brushed my hair properly. I just grabbed my keys, slipped on my shoes, and went. Something inside me wouldn't let me sit still. When I arrived, everything looked normal from the outside. The car was in the driveway. The blinds were drawn. I rang the doorbell twice, then knocked. "Nathan," I called. "It's Mom. Open up, please." Nothing. I reached for the spare key he once gave me and let myself in. The house was quiet. Still. I stepped into the kitchen and saw a half-eaten sandwich on the counter, a cup of coffee now cold. That told me one thing: he hadn't left. He was still here. I walked slowly down the hallway. The guest room was untouched. The office door was open, papers scattered on the desk. Then I saw the light under his bedroom door. I knocked gently. "Nathan." No answer. I pushed the door open and found him sitting on the edge of his bed, still dressed in yesterday's clothes, staring at nothing. His eyes were dull, like someone had turned the brightness down on his spirit. "Sweetheart," I said, stepping closer. "What's going on?" He blinked slowly and looked at me, like it took effort just to recognize me. "I messed everything up," he whispered. I sat beside him. "Tell me." His voice cracked as he spoke. "The bank. The house. My job. It's all falling apart. The reassessment on the loan came through, and the new terms. I can't keep up with the payments. I've missed 2 already. I didn't tell anyone. I thought I could fix it before it got worse." I listened without interrupting. "And now they're threatening foreclosure," he said, barely above a whisper. "If I don't come up with a lump sum by the end of next week, they'll start the process." I reached for his hand. "Why didn't you come to me sooner?" "Because I was ashamed," he said. "I promised I'd make things right with you, and now I'm losing everything. My job's hanging by a thread. They know something's wrong. And the truth is, I don't know what I'm doing anymore." I felt something inside me ache, not just for the situation, but for the weight he'd been carrying alone. I wanted to tell him everything would be okay, but I didn't believe that. Not yet. What I did know was that he needed someone to stand by him. Not because he deserved it, but because sometimes love doesn't wait for perfect conditions. "Let's take this one step at a time," I said. "We'll go through your finances together. Maybe there's a way." He shook his head. "There's too much. Credit cards, car loan, the mortgage. I thought I could handle it. I thought being successful meant having all the things. But I didn't realize how fast it could all slip away." We spent the next few hours sorting through bills and notices. It was worse than I thought. He was buried in debt, and I could see how hard he had been trying to keep the image together. For me, for his work, maybe even for himself. That night I stayed with him. I cooked us dinner. Nothing fancy, just scrambled eggs and toast. He barely touched his plate. He was quiet, more like the boy I remembered after Mark died, scared but trying to act brave. Before bed, he finally looked me in the eye and said, "I don't deserve your help, Mom." I placed a hand on his cheek. "Maybe not. But you're still my son. That doesn't go away just because you messed up." "But I hurt you," he said. "I humiliated you." I used you. You did, I agreed. But now you're here. And you're telling the truth. That matters. He nodded slowly, tears slipping down his face. I slept in the guest room that night, the one he had set up for me. The sheets smelled like lavender, and there was a photo of us on the nightstand. Even in the middle of everything falling apart, he had tried to make space for me. That meant something. In the morning, we got up early and made a plan. He would call the bank, see if a payment arrangement could be made. I would go with him to his office and help him explain his situation. Pride had gotten him into this mess, and now humility had to help get him out. Before we left, he turned to me and said, "I thought this house would make me feel like I'd finally arrived. But I've never felt smaller." I looked at him, and for the first time in a long while, I saw not the businessman, not the proud homeowner, but my son. My child, stripped of all the polish and pretense. "Houses are made of wood and stone," I said gently. "Homes are made of people. You can build 100 houses, but if you forget the people who helped you get there, they'll all feel empty." He nodded quietly. What we didn't know then was that this was only the beginning of the storm. There was more coming, something that would shake us harder than overdue bills or prideful mistakes. Something that would remind both of us how fragile life really is. And once again, I would have to choose what kind of mother I was going to be, one who looked backward or one who reached forward, no matter the cost. The following weeks were a blur of paperwork, phone calls, and long, quiet evenings. Nathan and I worked together, side by side, trying to untangle the mess he had built around himself. We cut out unnecessary expenses, sold his second car, and met with a financial advisor who told him plainly, "It's going to take time. But it's fixable if you stay honest." Nathan listened this time. Really listened. He was no longer trying to impress anyone. He was trying to repair, to rebuild not only his finances but his sense of direction. And little by little he started to shift. He wasn't just apologizing anymore, he was showing me. With his actions, not his words. The house, once so full of echoes, began to feel lived in. He cooked. He cleaned. He even started tending to the small garden patch in the backyard. He told me one day, "It's weirdly calming, like life slows down out here." I didn't stay with him full time, but I visited often. Sometimes just to keep him company. Sometimes to cook together. The air between us had changed, less tension, more trust. I even caught him humming one morning, something he used to do as a boy when he was in a good mood. It felt like a small miracle. But just when I thought we were finding steady ground again, life reminded us that it rarely moves in a straight line. It was a Tuesday. I remember because I had my library group in the morning, and afterward, I went to the bakery and picked up 2 slices of carrot cake, his favorite. I planned to surprise him. I knew he had a hard day ahead, meeting with the mortgage specialist. I figured something sweet might lift his spirits. When I arrived, the front door was slightly ajar. That was unusual. Nathan always locked up. I stepped inside, calling his name, but there was no answer. At first, I thought he might be in the backyard, but the moment I walked into the hallway, I saw him, collapsed on the floor near the bathroom. "Nathan!" I screamed, dropping the cake box. I rushed to him. His breathing was shallow, his face pale, clammy. His hand twitched slightly when I touched it. I called 911 with shaking hands, telling them everything as clearly as I could. It felt like hours, though it was only minutes before the ambulance arrived. I rode with him, clutching his hand the whole way, whispering, "Stay with me. Please stay with me." At the hospital, the doctors moved quickly. I sat in the waiting room, gripping the edge of my seat, heart pounding. The same helplessness I had felt when I lost my husband came back like a wave. The fear of losing someone without warning, without goodbye, it wrapped around me like a cold wind. A nurse came out an hour later and told me he'd suffered a mild heart attack. "We caught it in time," she said. "He's stable now, but he'll need to rest. His body's been under too much stress." I nodded, blinking away tears. When I was finally allowed to see him, he looked small in that hospital bed. Tubes in his arm, monitors beeping steadily. But he smiled when he saw me. "Guess I took the crash part of financial crash too literally," he joked weakly. I sat beside him and held his hand. "Don't ever scare me like that again." He closed his eyes for a moment. I thought I could fix everything fast. But I didn't take care of myself. I didn't slow down. I just kept running from one thing to the next. "You don't have to run anymore," I said softly. "You're not alone, Nathan." He looked at me, and for a long moment he didn't speak. Then he said something that struck deeper than anything else before. "I don't deserve you." I leaned in and whispered, "You don't have to. I'm your mother. My love doesn't come with conditions." But I need you to stop proving yourself to the world and start being kind to yourself. He nodded, tears in his eyes. Nathan stayed in the hospital for a few days. I was there every day. We talked, read magazines, watched old shows on the tiny television. It was quiet time. Honest time. He opened up in ways he never had before. Told me about how empty he'd felt even after buying the house. How he thought success would fill the space inside him, but it only made the emptiness louder. I kept trying to be the man people respected, he said. But I didn't even respect myself. You're learning now, I told him. That's what matters. When he was discharged, I brought him back to my house instead of his. Just for a while, until he regained his strength. He didn't protest. In fact, I think he needed that comfort, something warm and familiar. We sat on my little porch most evenings, wrapped in blankets, sipping tea. Remember when I used to sit out here after school and tell you about my day? He asked one night. I smiled. You used to talk for hours without breathing. I had to bribe you with cookies to get you to pause. He laughed softly. Those were good days. They were, I said. But they weren't perfect. We struggled. We cried. But we had each other. He nodded. That's what I want again. Not the house, not the show. Just the real stuff. For a while, things slowed down in a good way. Nathan began to walk more, eat better, sleep longer. We baked together. We watched old movies. He asked about his dad more than he ever had before. I told him the stories I'd been holding on to, the quiet memories I'd tucked away for rainy days. But one evening, he sat me down with a serious look on his face. I think I need to sell the house, he said. I wasn't surprised. I'd felt it coming. I don't need it, he said. It's just walls. It's not where I feel at home anymore. I reached for his hand. I'll support you, whatever you choose. He did sell it, eventually. Took a while to go through. He cleared what debt he could and moved into a smaller apartment not far from me. Nothing fancy. Just enough space for him, a couch and peace. I feel lighter, he told me after the move. Like I can breathe again. We celebrated quietly. No party this time. Just dinner at my house, the way it used to be, 2 plates, 1 candle, and laughter that didn't need an audience. Sometimes life pulls you apart just so it can knit you back together in stronger stitches. I didn't get the son I dreamed of overnight. I got the real one. The one who fell. The one who stood back up. But I still felt something in my bones. That this chapter wasn't quite finished. That life had one more thing left to teach us. And soon, I would come to see. Some lessons arrive late, but they never come empty-handed. Nathan had begun a new life, slower and smaller but more genuine. He no longer rushed to prove himself. He didn't talk about deals or promotions. He spoke about time, about presence, about remembering what matters. That shift was more valuable to me than any house he could have bought, or any gift he could have wrapped. He started coming over regularly, not out of guilt but out of want. Sometimes he'd bring groceries. Other times he'd just show up with coffee and say, "Thought you might want some company." It reminded me of when he was young, always finding his way back to my side, needing nothing more than to be seen. He even joined me at the local community center one Saturday, where I volunteered in the reading room. He sat with the children, read them stories, laughed when they corrected him on how to pronounce the dragon's name. That night, as we walked back to the car, he said, "I forgot how good it feels to just give." I looked at him and smiled. That's the kind of success you don't need to explain to anyone. Still, I knew life wasn't done with us. I felt it in my bones, the way you feel the air shift before a storm. Nathan was stronger, yes, but also more vulnerable now. Like someone who had climbed out of deep water, soaked and breathing hard, but not fully dry yet. It was early spring when he started complaining about headaches. Nothing serious at first. He brushed them off, said it was probably stress or allergies. But then came the dizzy spells, the blurred vision. I noticed it before he said anything. How he held the wall as he walked, how he rubbed his temples when he thought I wasn't looking. "Have you seen a doctor?" I asked him one afternoon. "Yeah," he said casually. "Routine stuff. They're running a few tests." But I knew his tone. It was the same one he used when he didn't want me to worry. And that's how I knew to worry. A week later, he sat on my porch, holding a manila envelope in his lap. He didn't say anything for a long while. Just stared at it. "They found something," he said finally. "A mass. On the left side of my brain." I felt the air leave my lungs. "They think it's a tumor," he continued, voice steady but quiet. "Could be benign. They won't know until they do a biopsy. But it's pressing on some nerves. That's why I've been off lately." I reached for his hand. It was cold, trembling slightly. "When?" I asked. Next week, he said. They'll admit me Monday. Surgery's scheduled for Tuesday. He looked at me, eyes searching, scared. I don't want to go through it alone. You won't, I said, squeezing his hand. Not for 1 second. The days that followed were heavy. I stayed with him, cooked him meals, read to him like I used to when he was little. He tried to act calm, but I saw the fear in him, saw the way he clutched his coffee mug like it was the only thing keeping him steady. The night before the surgery, he said something I'll never forget. I always thought the house was the biggest thing you gave me, he said, lying on the couch with a blanket tucked around his shoulders. But it wasn't. It was this. Your presence. Your patience. Your love, even when I didn't deserve it. I didn't know what to say. So I just kissed his forehead and whispered, I'll always be here. The morning of the surgery, the hospital lights were too bright. The hall's too quiet. They wheeled him in just after sunrise. I held his hand until they took him through the double doors. Be brave, I told him. You too, he replied. I waited alone in that waiting room for hours. Time stopped meaning anything. I stared at the clock, at the ceiling, at the coffee machine. I prayed. I bargained. I remembered every mistake, every moment I wished I had done more. When the doctor finally came out, I couldn't read his face. For a second, I feared the worst. The tumor was operable, he said. We removed it fully. There were complications, but he pulled through. He's not out of the woods yet, but this was the best outcome we could have hoped for. I didn't realize I was crying until the nurse offered me a tissue. When they let me see him, he was asleep, pale, a bandage on his head. But he was breathing. Alive. Fighting. The days after surgery were hard. He had trouble speaking at first. His memory was patchy. Some days he knew what year it was. Some days he didn't. But he worked at it slowly with all the determination I knew he had inside him. I stayed with him through it all. Therapy sessions, doctor visits, quiet afternoons with soft music playing in the background. He regained more each week. His speech improved. His strength returned. The fog in his eyes began to clear. One morning, as I was making eggs, he came up behind me and hugged me tightly. I wouldn't be here without you, he said. Not just now. Always. I leaned back into him and said, that's what being a mother means. Even when the world turns its back on you, I won't. Eventually, he was able to return to normal life, though it looked different now. Slower. More intentional. He started volunteering with me at the community center. Started writing, too, just short essays and memories. He told me it helped him feel grounded. One afternoon, he read me a piece he'd written. It ended like this. Respect isn't a gift you ask for, it's something you give first to the ones who gave you everything before you had anything. That line stayed with me. We're still walking this path together, Nathan and I. Not perfect. Not without bumps. But with more understanding than we ever had before. He visits often, sometimes bringing new recipes he wants to try, sometimes just to sit and listen to the birds with me. Looking back, I don't regret the choice I made to pull my name from that loan. It wasn't about the money. It was about teaching him something life hadn't yet managed to: gratitude, humility, and love that shows itself through action. He learned, and so did I. Because sometimes the people we love the most don't understand their own hearts until they're broken open. And sometimes the only way they find their way home is by losing everything else first. But when they finally do come home, you welcome them, not because they deserve it, but because they're yours. Always.